Howie ended off our recent show. We were talking about Bruce Bochy and the impact he had on baseball and just, what a Hall of Fame career he's had as a manager. We cannot ignore Dusty Baker, who recently announced his retirement. And it's just come out recently that the main reason why he decided that now was the time to retire is because he's sick and tired of bloggers
Yeah,
and people tweeting at him.
I saw that
Which
too. I
it actually just came out. He was on Charles Barkley's podcast recently with Ernie Johnson, and they were having a discussion about why now. And essentially, he was fed up with the bloggers and the tweeters.
That threw me when I saw that. Dusty Baker is a quintessential old style baseball guy, and I love him. I love Dusty Baker, and to hear that, it made me sad. For one, all these people with opinions that haven't been involved in the game or the games. Everybody's got an opinion, and what's the old line? If a coach or if a manager starts listening to the fans, they'll soon be sitting with them. Is that the old line? But Dusty Baker, he's up there in age now too. He's earned the right to relax a little bit if he wants. I have no problem with that, but it made me sad that he was getting frustrated and upset by all of the people out there giving their opinions.
Well, I don't want to go off on a rant here to start this because I want to give him the credit he deserves.
Absolutely.
But in this day and age, there are so many, I'll be honest, phonies out there who have a YouTube channel, have, a podcast, who are looking for clicks, looking for controversial topics, and they will crap on anybody, anytime, anywhere without any knowledge of what's going on behind the scenes or even making that attempt to find out what was going on behind the scenes. This is the day and age we live in with social media, and we're seeing it across the board. It's not just sports, it's everywhere that we have so much of this going on. When you are an old school manager, the way Dusty Baker and player, has lived his life, and it's been a wonderful baseball life. I said in the last show about baseball lives, I want to see a documentary on Dusty Baker because he has been part of some wonderful baseball history, some not so great baseball history, and we'll get into all of that on this edition of the Sports Lunatics.
Before we started recording, you were going off about all of the things that he has done and all the things that all the places he's been, whether it was fortuitous or whether it was just a part of everything. He has been a part of so many different baseball moments over the past 60 years.
Absolutely. And I want to give credit to Brantford Doolittle of ESPN, who wrote an incredible piece. And that's sort of what spurred this show topic, because he went through, some of the monumental events in baseball history that Dusty Baker was either live there or it impacted the game that he was a part of as a player and as a manager. So, like when he came into the league, it's incredible, that he was able, to be part of an Atlanta Braves team with Hank Aaron, Tito Francona, Jim Wynn, got his first hit off the Pittsburgh Pirates. Roberto Clemente is in the outfield. He was part of the DH rule in terms of the leagues and changing how baseball is played in one league over another. He's on the on-deck circle. So this is where we're going to start. We're going to start with some great moments. He was in the on-deck circle for Hank Aaron's 715th home run in 1974. It's pretty incredible. We've talked about that moment and the impact it's had not only in baseball but on society in terms of Vin Scully's wonderful call of the home run. But Dusty Baker was a big part of that celebration when he crossed home plate.
1 ball and no strikes. Aaron waiting. The outfield deep and straight away. Fastball is a high drive into deep left center field. Buckner goes back to the fence. It is gone. the state of Georgia. What a marvelous moment for the country and the world. A black man is getting a standing ovation in the Deep South for breaking a record of an all-time baseball idol. And it is a great moment for all of us, and particularly for Henry Aaron.
When I think of that, I was watching the game that night up in my parents' bedroom. They were watching something downstairs, and I wanted to watch the game because we knew that history was going to unfold at some point, and the game was nationally broadcast. And Al Downing was the pitcher, and they were playing the Dodgers. So many different things. I didn't realize that Dusty Baker was on deck at that moment. What kills me too is going back and thinking about that moment as Aaron is rounding the bases. Fans are running around on the field with him, and he didn't know if they were trying, because of the death threats that he had been receiving. He didn't know if somebody was out there with a knife or something like that. He was trying to just push people away and run around the bases. I wrote a piece last week about the 1969 Mets and when they won the division. People stormed the field and they're ripping up everything. They stole the bases. They stole the plate. They're ripping sod out of the ground so they can keep it as a souvenir. After the Mets won the World Series, Pearl Bailey, the singer, is in the clubhouse with the Mets. She's got a piece of sod in her hand and she's doing, showing off, it's my powder puff. You never see that anymore. And it just strikes me as strange to see that. And that's what the one moment that I take away from that is all of the people that Aaron's got to run through. We talked about Chris Chambliss hitting the home run for the Yankees, and he's having to just shove people out of the way as he's going around the bases. And they had to bring him back out after that, after the game was over, with cops and umpires to make sure that he tagged or touched the home plate. It's crazy to me. But getting back to Dusty Baker, it's funny because the reason he's getting out of baseball is because of all these people, on social media, where they were all running around on the field with Hank Aaron, moments before he was about to step to the plate.
Well, it was such a different time too. And I remember Mike Hogan, as you know, on the Fan 590 here locally in Toronto, actually got the two guys who were running with Aaron around the bases.
Wow.
On one of his shows, and they were talking about that experience and why they did it, and it was all about a celebration. It was a euphoric event.
In Aaron's mind, with all of the letters and the telegrams he'd been receiving, angry because he was a black man and he was about to pass Babe Ruth's record, and they were going to do him harm. He didn't know who was good and who wasn't, and so I just feel for him in that moment.
So fast forward the next year, he was trying to get out of Atlanta, that he was not happy there. And he was eventually moved to the LA Dodgers, where some significant events happened in his career. But this one's a different one. You just talked about fans storming the field. There was that classic moment where Rick Monday, two fans raced onto the field in the outfield and was starting to set fire to the American flag. And Rick Monday ran across and scooped up the flag and saved Old Glory. It's still talked about today, and one of the epic baseball moments. These fans were disgruntled. They were trying to make a point and protest by burning the flag. And, Rick Monday saved the day.
I'm not sure what he's doing out there. It looks like he's going to burn a flag, and Rick Monday runs and takes it away from him. So Monday, I think a guy was going to set fire to the American flag. Can you imagine that? Well, they better lose him in a hurry. And Monday, when he realized what he was going to do, raced over and took the flag away from him.
That moment always comes up every year on the date, because you know how social media is on Twitter, on Facebook. On this day, Rick Monday saved the American flag. It always comes up every year.
I did not know this one. We talk about high fives all the time. Actually, I was at a social gathering recently, and the dog came around, and I said, "Hi, paw," because As kids growing up, we always gave the high fives. I did not realize Dusty Baker was actually one of the innovators of the high five. He was a teammate of Glenn Burke. And after a home run, Baker approached the plate and Burke essentially held up his hand, as in the high five signal that we know. And Dusty greeted him with the high five. I did not know that.
I did not know that either. Last night I saw the Seinfeld episode where Jerry's trying to buy a car off of Elaine's boyfriend, David Putty, who's now a car salesman as opposed to a mechanic. And Putty was annoying Jerry by wanting to do a high five every 5 seconds. High five.
And that actually happened on the last day of the baseball season. The Dodgers were actually winning the division title. And that was Baker's 30th home run. And he hit it off of J.R. Richard, the incredible pitcher of the Houston Astros, whose career was cut far too short by a stroke. It was actually pretty impressive because that year the Dodgers had 4 30-run home run hitters, Steve Garvey, Ron Cey, and Reggie Smith, classic names of Dodgers past. And Dusty Baker joined that elite group. The very first baseball moment I remember watching on television was this game, and that was Reggie Jackson hitting his 3 home runs in Game 6 of the 1977 World Series. Dusty Baker, of course, a member of the Dodgers that year in the outfield, to witness it on 3 consecutive pitches from Dodgers pitchers. It's legendary. Reggie Jackson, of course, getting the label Mr. October.
Reggie Jackson. Long drive right field. Goodbye. A big World Series for Reggie Jackson, despite all the palaver about his discontent with Billy Morton as he comes up with his 3rd home run of the series. Hard shot right field. It's gone. Oh, what a World Series for Reggie Jackson. Goodbye. Goodbye. Oh, what a blow. What a way to top it off. Forget about who the most valuable player is in the World Series. How this man has responded to pressure. Oh, what a beam on his face. How can you blame him? He's answered the whole world.
Reggie Jackson's last at-bat, probably in the 1977 series.
What a colossal blow.
And that was a monster in itself. 475 feet, probably. Look at that. Look at Torres. You don't think they know it? Feel it in there?
What are they all thinking now? After all the furor, after all the hassling, it came down to this. A whole long season. Out comes Reggie.
That was just a wild night. I think I was at a party for our ball team, and the game was on TV, and we're all standing around the TV watching it, and to see Reggie Jackson. And Reggie was a 2-time World Series MVP. Corey Seager became a 2-time World Series MVP, and Seager was the first guy to do it with 2 different teams. His Texas Rangers defeated Dusty Baker's Houston Astros in the ALCS. And first of all, for me, as an old man, I'm still distressed by knowing that the Houston Astros are in the American League. They should be a National League team. Milwaukee should be an American League team. Anyway, I'll stop right there.
Actually, Reggie Jackson, of course, won it on 2 different teams as well. Oakland.
Yes, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Yep, you're right.
They're the only 2 to win 2 MVPs on different teams.
Well, I can remember too.
We talk about 1981 a lot as former Expo fans, well, current Expo fans, but the 1981 Montreal Expos, and what a wild ride 1981 was, because we had the work stoppage, we had a new playoff format for that year only, but also it was the birth of Fernando Mania, and that, of course, is Fernando Valenzuela, who was a sensation. There have been numerous documentaries, the 30 for 30 they did on that year, and just what he meant to not only the Dodgers, but also the Latin and the Mexican community outside of that. Is pretty fascinating and incredible.
Crowd standing now as one, exhorting the rookie on. 2-2 pitch. Fernando Valenzuela, who threw 149 pitches tonight. That wasn't one for the Art Museum, but it was efficient, and he got the job done.
And then, of course, the Dodgers defeating the Expos, Blue Monday. Of course, he was there in Montreal.
Here's the 3-1 pitch, and it swung on, fly ball, center field. Dawson going back onto the warning track. Dawson at the wall. That ball is a home run. That ball is out of here, and a home run for Rick Monday, and the Dodger bench clears to congratulate Rick Monday, who has hit a 2-out home run here in the 9th inning, and it appeared that Andre Dawson had room as he went back to the fence, and he just flat ran out of room as the ball cleared the fence at about the 385 mark.
And then they go on in 1981 and win the World Series.
Welch continues to throw in the Los Angeles bullpen. Watson hits it high in the air. For the center fielder, Ken Landreau, this should do it. The Dodgers are the 1981 champions of baseball.
You know, we talked about 1981 numerous times. And the thing about 1981, too, you can't tell me that splitting the season into two parts and having a divisional series for the first time didn't give owners ideas about expanding the playoffs.
As a fan, we loved it. Now, I said to you before we started the show, I didn't realize Dusty Baker's last year was in Oakland in 1986. And he played with Jose Canseco, and they had this call-up. His name was Mark McGuire. You may have heard of him. He was hired as a coach by Tony La Russa once his playing career was over. So he was 37, and they became a coach. Well, of course, fast forward to 1989, he was in Candlestick Park for the greatest opening in television history, and that, of course, was Al Michaels' call of the 1989 earthquake in San Francisco on October 17th.
Candy Maldonado with the hesitation, allowing Jose Canseco to score, and he fails to get Dave Parker at second base, so the Oakland A's take.
I'll tell you what, we're having an earthquake. Even though we have no picture and no return audio, and we will be back, we hope, from San Francisco in just a moment.
Just a wild, wild moment. I remember I was out having drinks with a friend, and we were at the Prescott Hotel in Ottawa, a legendary imbibing spot. The game was on the TV, and everybody was just glued to the TV, seeing what was going on and what was happening there. It was crazy. It was surreal what was going on in the stadium. Stadium's shaking. Players are getting their wives and kids out of the stands, to try to just make sure they were safe. It was incredible. It was surreal. And for that length of time that it was all happening, everybody was just glued to the TV.
It was a night I'll never forget. I was watching that game, and then, of course, everything changed. I keep referring back to the 30 for 30 documentaries because they're so good. Please check out the one on the San Francisco earthquake. The way it was presented on television at the time, it was like, wow, we had a major, we had an earthquake, but nobody knew the extent outside of the stadium.
Right.
But even in the stadium, it could have been a massive disaster. And I don't want to give it all away because I want you to check it out. But the stadium itself was an old stadium. Candlestick Park it had a few years on it at that time. And there were some interesting, incredible revelations in the documentary that I did not know how close of an epic disaster there could have been that night. I know that's called a tease in broadcasting, but I'm telling you, check it out because some of the stories that happened within that stadium were pretty incredible of how close of a true disaster that could have been. It was an awful night for San Francisco. Many lives were lost, and some of the pictures when you see them again, it's incredible. Just some of the survival stories, but wild stuff that night with that earthquake. Again, the World Series suspended for 12 days before they could resume it. So, and of course, it wasn't a great World Series. Oakland swept the Giants, but that night, unforgettable.
Johnny, I don't know if you've ever lived through an earthquake or an earth tremor. I mean, in Ottawa, we used to get them, little ones intermittently.
Right.
But having lived in Seattle and experienced one there, it was I think it was a 5 or a 6 on the Richter scale when we were there. I'm up on a ladder and I'm trying to fix something to the wall, and I'm looking down, and the truck, the pickup truck that's on the in the warehouse in the shop beside me was dancing, and I'm looking at it and saying, why is the truck dancing? And I realize I'm on a ladder, and I realize what's happening because my ex-wife comes running in and says, we're having an earthquake. And I get off the ladder right away. And they say to stand in a doorway because things, I don't know, but there's 2 of us. How do we both stand in the doorway? That was a pretty wild time in our lives in 2000. We experienced a bunch of things together. One time we're in a plane heading into Newark, and I can see the Statue of Liberty over there, and we hit an air pocket or something and drop really fast, and people are screaming. The oxygen masks start falling. People are throwing up into the bags, praying, screaming. I'm looking at Michelle, and she's looking at me, and I said to her, I realized I'm in the wrong seat. She says, why? I said, because somebody else's life was flashing before my eyes. But yeah, just some wild stuff.
Getting back to Dusty Baker and just incredible, odd events. So we're going to talk about 2 quick ones here. The first year he took over as Giants manager, San Francisco, he was the manager of the team that won 103-59 and did not make the postseason because, again, we just talked about the divisions had not expanded yet. There were multiple teams. They lost out to the Dodgers. They could have forced a tiebreaker, but they got smoked 12-1, and they finished 103-59, missed the playoffs. I remember that day, actually, because I was interested. The group of people I was with, they were Giants fans. And then when we heard the score, it was like, wow, well, that's not going to happen. But again, he got to see Barry Bonds, a different Barry Bonds, managed Barry Bonds for several years, and of course was in the dugout for Bonds hitting home runs 71, 72, and 73.
There's a high drive deep into right center field to the big part of the ballpark. Number 71, and what a shot over the 421-foot marker. The deepest part of any ballpark in the National League. And Barry Bonds is now the home run king, number 71, and it was impressive.
1-1 hit in the air to center field, 399.
Here's the payoff. A floater to Bonds, and he hits it high. He hits it deep, and it is out of here. Number 73.
One other thing too that about Dusty Baker, you always see him with a toothpick, always. And I'm just looking at this right now. It says Baker is noted for his love of toothpicks, saying toothpicks are an excellent source of protein while chewing at least one every game. But he said he used it to prevent him from chewing tobacco. And he saw, I guess, firsthand over many, many years, the deleterious effects that chewing tobacco has on tissue, on jaws, and on skin, and et cetera. So he didn't want it. He didn't want that to affect him. So he always chewed on a toothpick instead of chewing tobacco.
That's actually a great story, and a healthy.
Yeah. You said it before. If they're going to make a documentary series called A Baseball Life, you'd want to have one on Dusty Baker. Just to hear his stories. His stories must be epic.
Just the oddball events, too. We just talked about the high five.
Yes.
The American flag. I completely forgot he was the manager of the Cubs during the Bartman game.
Yeah.
Again in the air, down the left field line. Reaching into the stands and couldn't get it, and he's livid with a fan.
That's awfully close to fan interference right there. The umpire's all over it. The umpire right down there, Mike Everett's on the play. If Alou has to reach into the stands, it's fair game for the fans to catch the ball. If the fan reaches out over the field, then it can be ruled fan interference. That is very, very close.
But he never won until he goes to a Houston Astros team that was just caught in a major cheating scandal. The manager loses his job. They needed a manager to replace him, and they turned to Dusty Baker. And I said at the time, working in sports radio, he was the perfect hire because everybody loved Dusty. And he was the perfect manager because he didn't have a tarnished reputation.
No, exactly. He brought credibility to the position, and
instant credibility.
And he was the one who took the slings and arrows. He absorbed everything and said, "Just I'll handle it. I'll take care of it. It's okay. We're baseball players first and foremost. If you want to take a shot at me."
Right. And at the time, Dusty had a reputation. He couldn't win the big one. He got to the postseason several times.
Mm-hmm.
Was manager of the Reds and the Nationals. And, they would make the postseason. They'd always have great regular season records, but he could never win the big one. And then, of course, with Houston, they get through that scandal and he wins the big one. They finally win the big one for Dusty, which everybody was really happy for him, not so much for the actual Astros, because there were a lot of haters out there for the Houston Astros going, oh my God, here we go again. But everybody was happy for Dusty Baker to finally win his first world championship.
There goes the runner. Fly ball down the right field line. Tucker comes on. Kyle Tucker. This time they finish the job. The Houston Astros, world champions. Dusty Baker has his ring in his 25th year as a manager. Guy that brought credibility and stability back to the Astros in the wake of the scandal. Guy that's been in baseball for more than 50 years. He's a baseball legend. He's a beautiful human being. And he has the ring that everybody wanted him to get.
What a wonderful baseball life, though, Dusty Baker. Been part of some incredible moments. I just thought the article was fascinating. And again, check it out. Brandon Doolittle's column, I believe, October 28th. Check it out because he goes in depth of just more connections and just connecting the dots of Dusty Baker, which is fascinating. Howie, we're going to end the show there. Again, more Crazy Days and Wild Night. Quick recap of the book.
Wonderful stories, little stories here and there throughout the book. All kinds of different things about people. The book takes place in the milieu of sports, but it's about the people around that make the things happen. And I think that's the beauty of it. Get it on
check
Amazon.
it out at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca. That's all the time we have. I'm Shawn, Lavigne, Halifax, Nova Scotia.
I'm Howie Mooney in Barrie, Ontario.
Check out thesportslunatics.com. Check us out, podcasts, wherever you get your favorite podcast, and Sports Lunatics on YouTube. Have a great sports day.